mute my phone. Cool. All right. So, all right, let me get started here. Sorry, guys. Again, just for those who are just now joining, thank you for joining. I really hadn't planned on doing this, but I've been seeing a lot of conversation about House Bill 27. Seems to be a lot of kind of misunderstanding of what the intent at least was and what I believe it is. And so I thought I'd take a little bit of time to go over a few things. And let me first of all give you a little bit of understanding of how this began. So I was actually contacted by a county clerk who said, "Hey, I kind of am aware of the problems that you had in the last caucus, and how the allocation of delegates was difficult." And that you ended up, the Salt Lake County did come up with a temporary solution or a solution in the bylaws that allowed to combining of precincts, but ultimately that caused a lot of confusion that we would like to avoid in the future. The confusion was people would show up and they would belong to a different precinct name than what was on their voter registration, and the intent of that different district precinct name, was it would be a combined precinct with multiple precincts, so that and I'll get into this a little bit later, but so that there would be more of an average number of registered Republicans being represented per delegate. And so it's very hard to do. I feel like we came to a pretty good solution with that. However, the actual execution was much more complicated than I ever expected it to be. It worked, but it added to the complexities. So, I've always been of the opinion that that was a great, we fixed some things, but we broke some others. And so we were looking for better solutions. And before I get into too much, let me give you a little bit of background. So that, by the way, that clerk came to me, said, so we wanted to propose this bill. And the reason we want to propose the bill, and this one clerk basically represented like most of the county clerks of Utah. And they had pretty much all agreed that this bill would be nice. And the only thing it was going to do at that time, the only thing it was going to do is it's changing the threshold that was required. So when right now, before this bill, when a precinct of total registered voters, not Republicans, but total registered voters, went to 1,250. Once it hit that number, they were forced to split the precinct. Well, with the growth that we've had in Utah, we literally went from 680 precincts in 2021 to 980-ish precincts in 2024. That's 300 more precincts. And prior to that, we were down at like 480 in Salt Lake County. Now, keep in mind, I'm not talking about the size, like physical size. I'm talking about the number of people in the precinct. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep neighborhoods together, but not have it represent too many people, because we want each voice heard. But the problem that Salt Lake County has had is we've got the north that's typically pretty blue. Let's be honest, it's pretty Democrat. When you get in the middle, they're kind of a little more conservative, and it literally gradually goes down to the dark red in like Bluffdale, Riverton, those areas, right? And it's really interesting. I'm going to show you some representations. They're just examples, but I want to give you guys an understanding of that problem. But so that clerk said, look, every decade, so in 2020, or for example, I think it was actually went into 2021, but in 2020 they started doing the census. So in 2021, that census was complete, and then they redrew all the district lines, and then the clerks have to hurry and redraw all the precincts. Now, keep in mind, the district lines start with House districts, Senate districts, state school board, county districts, city council districts, and then you start getting, and I might have missed some there, and then you start getting into tax districts. So you start getting into water rights, sewer, electrical, any of those things that could potentially be on a ballot are all district lines. So what the clerks have to then do is once all those district lines are all redrawn, is they have to draw the precincts, and every precinct must have an identical ballot, no matter what issue comes up in that area. So, for example, if a particular precinct has a problem with water taxes, that's a whole ballot, or a specific area. Let's say a specific area has a problem with water. They have to have their own ballot for those precincts. So a clerk is very unlikely to ever want to make big precincts. They actually do kind of want to make them pretty granular. And the reason for that, again, is they need every single ballot to be, or they need everybody in that precinct to have the same ballot. So they're already looking at smaller precincts. But again, we're back to massive growth here in Utah, specifically Salt Lake County, where primarily in the north, where it's blue, we have a lot of precincts that are getting split. They're right at that 1,250 line. And because of subdivisions, high density housing that everyone's trying to build, all the crazy stuff, all the reconstruction up north, they're constantly splitting these precincts. So again, we went from 680 precincts in 2021 to about 980 precincts in 2024 in 3 years. That means the clerks have to constantly split, tons of administrative work on their part. They hate it. They came to me and said, this can't be good for you guys either. It creates complication. I said, yeah, it absolutely creates complication, and it's worse. And so that's number one. First of all the complication, all the administrative work. And you might say, okay, well, what do we care about that? Well, we care because if we ever want to be autonomous from the state with our nominations, we cannot have a constant change like that. Okay. We'll never be able to handle it. I'll be honest, right now, it's insane. We cannot do that. So my point being is our goal is to have static lines from redistricting year to the next redistricting year, basically every 10 years, as much as possible. It's not going to be perfect. It'll never be completely static, but that is the goal so that the party can someday become autonomous from the state. Now, we do have to match the lines for the most part, again, because the ballots have to match. We can never be 100% autonomous. So we do have to take those precinct lines the clerk makes. We have to match those in some way. We can still combine. We can still do a couple things. We can combine precincts. We can do a little bit. But the more we do that, the more the complexity we have every caucus, and it gets much more complex for the party to manage. And I'm telling you, I did it in 2024. I had 3 weeks to help redraw 980 precincts. You want to know what a nightmare that is? I would love to show you how long that took. It took, I had 3 weeks to do it. And then we had to hurry and rush and get those precinct numbers out, notify everybody which precincts they're in. It was a nightmare. And the reason we only have 3 weeks is because it starts with the legislature. Legislature then passes that down to the counties. Counties then have to redraw everything, send it back to the lieutenant governor's office. They have to approve, they have to put it in their computers. Then they shove it back down to the clerks. By the time it gets back to us, we have 3 weeks, okay, before caucus. That is what I'm talking about. The insurmountable effort involved in this. We need static precincts. We need that to not change significantly. Okay, next problem. That's the number one problem, okay? And that's why the clerks wanted that. They said if we go from 1,250 to 3,000, which is the current bill, then that helps them. They're not forced to split when somebody builds a new apartment or they convert a commercial building into an apartment, because they can get up to that 3,000 threshold instead of at the 1,250, and it allows them to keep it consistent for longer. So it's good for them. It's good for us. It's not the end goal for us, but it does help us. Okay, the next thing I want to show you, I'm going to show you and I apologize. This is I literally had like an hour to put this together because I wanted to kind of describe the problem that we have in Salt Lake County with delegate allocation. So right now, the way that delegates are allocated, I'm going to stick to state delegates because basically the county delegates follow the state delegates. The way it's allocated has to be the same. It's just done. There's just more of them. So let's just stick with state delegates to make this simple. And I'm going to give you an example. So this is the basic delegate allocation. The state party says, okay, how did the election go? The last governor's election go? Which counties had the most Republican votes? Now they don't base on how many Republicans there are. They base on how many Republican votes they had. So based on that, they look at each county. Salt Lake County gets about a quarter of the vote. So we get it's not on here, but we get 1,180 state delegates. That's how many we have today out of 4,000. Okay, so a little more than a quarter. So now there's only, first of all, I want to make clear there's only 4 counties right now that get more than 300 delegates. All the other, there's 27 counties. There's 23 counties that get less than 300 delegates. Okay, so if we screw up with 300 delegates, I'm just going to say, if we screw up with 300 delegates, we've basically silenced the rest of the counties in the state. Now, I don't feel good about that because, unfortunately, we all know Salt Lake County is a little bit more blue than it should be. We're all working on that, but we don't want to be the ones who are silencing strong conservatives in Washington County or in Utah County or anywhere else, right? So I'm very sensitive to that. So I look at how we're allocating delegates. This is how we were doing it, and we're still kind of doing it this way. So I'm going to give you an example of 100 precincts. We're going to start, each precinct, according to the current bill, has less than 1,250 registered voters. I'm going to allocate us 125 delegates, just for an example. Every Republican must be represented. So every precinct that has a Republican must be represented by at least 1 delegate. That's a national party rule that we must stick by. We don't have, there's no way, we can't get away with anything other than that, okay? As a state or as a county. We cannot go over 125 delegates. We can't just make up delegates when we run out. And ideally, we want to give equal representation. And what I mean by that is, if I have 100 Republicans to 1 delegate, I want everyone to be 100 Republicans to 1 delegate. I don't want it to be a 1-to-1, which is what we have in a lot of cases in Salt Lake County. It's really bad. Or we used to be that way. We kind of fixed it, but that's how it was. So here's my example. This is basically, each of these squares represents a precinct. So this is 100 squares. This is 20 by 5. Hope I did my math right. So I'm taking each of these as 1 precinct. We're pretending this is Salt Lake County or whatever, right? You get the idea. And like I told you before, Salt Lake County in the north is typically pretty blue. And by the way, a lot of times, and I'm not going to say a lot of times, I'm no longer going to be chair in a couple months. I'm going to tell you like the way it is. Up north, candidates have been known to find precincts where there's only a couple of Republicans. They go recruit Democrats. They say, you, go become a party switcher, register Republican, show up the caucus, become the delegate, and infiltrate the convention. I know that happens. I'm aware of it happening. There's nothing we can do about it. We can't keep them out. There's just no way to do that. And what we're doing, because we're not having precincts, we don't have, because the way we allocate right now and the way things work, we're basically sacrificing those precincts and allowing that to happen. And so we, again, in November of 2023, we came up with a pretty good solution that fixed a lot of it, but it's not perfect, and I'd like to make it better. So anyway, so we got blue up here. Those are the ones that are at risk because Democrats will party switch and go take those delegate positions and precinct positions. Becomes a little bit better, all the way down to, let's call it Bluffdale, Riverton, Harriman, down here at the bottom. Now, on average, this number right here, on average, we have 5 Republicans in this area. We have 10 in this area, 20 here, 40 here, and 80 here. Now, it just happens to be it's exactly how Salt Lake County is. It just does that. It's like a rainbow. It goes from blue to red, not rainbow, but you know what I mean, blue to red. So what we got to do is we now have to allocate those 125 delegates. So I allocated the first pass, right? So the first pass, we have 100 precincts. Every precinct has to have a delegate. So there's 100 delegates allocated. Okay, we've got 25 delegates remaining. Obvious, we want those delegates to be in the conservative area, and it makes sense because we want to have the most representation possible with or the best equal representation across the county. So what are we going to do? We're going to put those last 25 down here. Unfortunately, it doesn't work out real well because we don't have enough to like really make it equal. I mean, in an ideal world, I'd see like 3 in down here and maybe 2 in here. You know what I'm saying? And down to like none up top, but we can't do that. So we do the best we can. This is all we can do. There's no way to do this any better other than combining precincts and reduce the number of overall total number of precincts. So here's what I did, or sorry. So there, here's where we're at. Hang on, I messed up. Oh, okay. So here's where we're at now. Now the next year comes along. These are allocated in the first year. It kind of works. We have our caucus meetings, and then the next year, it turns out we have 150 precincts that have to be split. This happened in 2023. Okay, well, where did they get split? Oh, what do you know? They're up in the blue area where all the development's happening for high density. Okay, so now we've got all these new precincts. Where are we going to get these delegates from? I can't make them up. They got to come from somewhere. So here's the problem. We have to take them from down here. We have to take them, well, we start from the area where the least is affected, and we have to go here. And then the next thing we have to do is we try to take them from here. Okay, now at least everybody has representation again. You see the problem? This is exactly what we run into. And by the way, I just got off the phone with the clerk a couple hours ago. We are looking at, if we don't pass this bill, we won't be at 980 precincts next year. We'll be at it's another 150-ish, 155. So we have 980 plus 155. I'm not doing the math right in my head right now, but that will be literally doing this. She's giving me a list of them, and she's already said, yeah, the majority of them are up in the north. Now some are in the south. That's great, but that doesn't really help us because the truth is the ones in the south, we really are adding Republicans. So Republicans move down south. So that's great. If we add precincts down south, that's great, and I love that we do. But the problem is every time we add one up north, it takes away from the representation down south. So we have all of these are 1 to 5 representation. If you use my example, there's a 1 to 10, 1 to 20, 1 to 40, and the best you've got is 1 to 40 down here. That's not very representative of Republicans. Basically, these Republicans up here, which aren't really Republicans, they're party switchers, they have more say in convention than the Republicans down here. Does that make any sense to anybody? No, doesn't make any sense to me. Okay, so this is one way. So number one,
Chris, can you hear me?
Yeah, just a minute, Casey. I'll give you guys a minute to ask questions.
Cool. I've had my hand up for a minute. I'm just kind of curious if you're going to go on a monologue or give people the opportunity to talk.
I am. Thanks, Casey. All right. So, and I will stop for questions in a minute, but let me get through this first. So, so what the goal is that Republicans represent Republicans in convention. And so this is why one of the things that we needed to do is the next time we have caucus, first of all, what we need to do is we need to have, we need to get back to where we're down into a manageable number of precincts. When I was first precinct chair, party chair, like I said, we had 680. That was already a massive increase. I think it was about 89 or something like that, new precincts that year than we had in the previous caucus. So it's rapidly growing. It's splitting. And by the way, it makes it harder and harder to find precinct chairs who will fill those because we're not in a caucus year. We have to go and knock on doors and say, hey, will you be a precinct chair? And by the way, it's already in an area where we don't know anybody. We don't really know these people because there's not a lot of Republicans. So we're hoping that these people who registered Republican that we're knocking on the door aren't just another blue rhino, which we don't know. The best we know is that they're registered Republicans and we're required to have a delegate there. And by the way, before we can have a delegate there, we have to have a precinct chair there. It's our bylaws. So these are all the problems we're trying to solve. The way, in my opinion, the way that we solve this is we combine precincts that are adjacent to each other as much as possible. We keep these and we look at the number of Republicans and combine as many as possible that have the same election districts, like I talked about earlier, combine as many as possible so that we can get an average. So let's say we combine these top four. I'm going to move these off for just a second. Let's say we combine these top four precincts here and only have one delegate representing those four. At least it's better, right? At least when they go to caucus, it's not one person in the room writing their name down to become the delegate. At least then we'll have hopefully, 10, 20 people in the room saying, okay, let's actually hear these people out and decide who's actually Republican. Because the more people you have show up in a room at a caucus, the better the chances are that we're going to elect a delegate who's actually a conservative. The less people in the room, the better chance that we're going to see on Twitter these people who showed up and make fun of the Republican Party. And I don't know if you guys probably saw this on Twitter, where they say they're making fun of us, saying, I just showed up and wrote my name down because nobody else walked in the room. That's what we ran into. That was actually in 2022. And then we had a little bit of it in 2024, but not nearly as much because we did the precinct combining. So this is what we're trying to get at. So the HB27, what it does, first of all, is it gives us some static. It allows us to keep us from constantly having to split and move those delegates around and take them away from conservative districts. It keeps it more static so that we can work towards being autonomous from the legislature telling us how to run our elections and our caucuses. It allows us to start moving in that direction. Right now, it's just far too complex for an all-volunteer organization. And I've been chair for 4 years. This is in my opinion, this is the closest we've gotten in probably a decade. But I feel like maybe we can get there. But we need this. This is going to help us, and it also helps the clerks, like I said. So with that, I'm going to look at I'm going to stop for just a second. I'm going to look at the questions, and I'll start going through them. Your mics are on. Okay, sorry. The election code is already clear that the legislature can't get involved in internal proceedings of a political party. The party has the autonomy to operate independently as it stands. I'm tired of gaslighting. Okay, that is absolutely true. However, we nominate for offices in political boundaries. Precincts are the lowest common denominator of a precinct boundary. So regardless of we're autonomous or not, we got to make sure that we're nominating in the same boundaries. So I agree with you. We definitely, they should not be telling us who we can nominate. They should not be telling us, the rules, like, that they can gather signatures and that. 100% agree with you on that. But the precincts are a lowest common denominator that there's no way around that. That if a ballot goes out for a candidate, it's going to go out to the same people in those precincts. You know what I'm saying? I hope I explained that correctly. Okay, that's bull crap. Okay, there is nothing we can do about party switchers. That's bull crap. There is nothing we can do about party switchers. We had bylaw 8 and defined our membership, and that the party would remove signature gatherers. Okay, so yes. However, there was a timing issue with that, and I
noticed that you admitted that you voted for that bylaw.
I was getting there. Give me a second. I'm getting there.
Okay.
Yeah, I did vote. I said I voted to get rid of it. I did say that. And you're blatantly lying and gaslighting people. Okay, so I voted to get rid of it, and the reason was because we had a timing issue. And by the way, I was working with I'm not well. I don't want to. There's people who very respected people in the party, Mike Lee, people like that, who we were tossing around ideas, trying to figure out how do we handle this. There's been a common understanding that there is an order in which we have to go to court for this, and we've ignored that order in the past. We were trying to get there this year. Either the party has to sue the state, or a candidate has to sue the state. But there's a specific order. It has to happen immediately after convention and before the primary for the party, or if it's after the primary. Anyway, it gets complex. But with bylaw 8 in place, it actually didn't allow us to do that very well. And most of us agreed. The people who were helping to fund it, the people who understood it, the lawyers, all pretty much agreed.
So the elitists that were involved,
what's that?
Understood it. The elitists that were involved understood that bylaw 8 needed to get removed.
Okay, the lawyers who were helping us from the RNC. I'm just gonna say I've had some conversations with Mike Lee. We've had conversations with others who that said, yeah, that's not a good way to go about it. This is the way it should be done. So yeah, I did vote to get rid of it. I feel good about that vote. It wasn't that I didn't agree with it. It was that the timing was not right. Does that make sense? So
does the timing that's not right also coincide with preventing measures of disciplinary action to be taken against state senators that are running for re-election who have continuously supported leniency towards sex offenders?
Okay, so I'm not going to address that right now because now we're dealing with.
It's definitely germane because it calls to question. It calls to question your credibility.
Casey, please.
It impeaches your
you
credibility.
can judge me all you want. You can judge the
germane.
senators all you want. This is about representation of the party and precincts and how those are drawn.
Right, but you want to talk about getting rid of the rhinos, but you refuse to quantify what the heck a rhino is.
No, I didn't say getting. I've presented ideas about this. I've done it at CCM. I've got support on some of that stuff. This is right now we're dealing with HB27. And the only reason I brought up the rhinos was because we're sacrificing precincts in blue areas where they're strategically being taken. I'm not talking about candidates. I'm talking about delegates. Okay. Let's stick to this topic. I'm happy to address that in another meeting. I'm not afraid to address that.
Let's debate the topic at hand. Thomas Jefferson's
This isn't a debate, guys. All right.
No.
You got 30 people on the call. In case you're hijacking this meeting, we want to know what's going on with HB27. Okay. And you got plenty of other opportunities and all day tomorrow to ambush Chris.
No, he's not. I would like to hear what he's saying. Thank you.
And I would too. Okay.
There's
how many other Chris? I have a question,
Yeah.
Chris. I have a question.
Okay, yeah, go ahead, Mike.
How many other people voted to get rid of? How many other people voted to get rid of that bylaw?
It was a 51-49 split.
Okay.
So and I mean in percentage wise, because it was by 2 or 3 votes.
Well, Chris and Mike, you bring up a point. Let's talk about HB27. I'm happy to
51% got rid of bylaw 8 out of how many people? 51% of how many people?
It right about 200. I don't know the exact number. It was back in 2021, I think, or 2020. I can't remember.
All right. So now that we have it settled that you were part of a very slim majority of close to 200 people to get rid of this bylaw, can we learn more about HB27 now?
Yeah. So that's what I was going to get to. Let's talk about 27 and Thomas Jefferson's ward precincts. Right. That is what the LDS Church based its ward strategy around, is Jefferson's concept of wards and ward precincts.
Sure. Okay. That may be true. I don't know if it's true or not. Sounds good.
No, it's 100% true. You can research it. Okay.
That's fine.
And Jefferson envisioned that would be roughly about 100 people, which is about the size of an LDS ward. Now, a LDS ward now is not 3,000 people. That completely dilutes the representative.
Whoa. Hang on. You just confused 2 different issues here. Okay, can I correct something really quick? 3,000 is the number of total registered Republicans. Total registered. Sorry, not Republicans. Total registered voters.
Correct. That's the language text that's in 27.
Right. We don't gather as registered voters. We gather as registered Republicans. And that's actually what's super important here, because when we get together as caucuses, our largest caucus in Salt Lake County has 650 registered Republicans. I agree, that's too big. And I've talked to Lanny, who's our current clerk, and I've asked, what can be done to split those precincts. It turns out it's one of them that's going to be split. Great, we're already going to be there. We're going to when it happens. That's not a problem. So we're already fixing that. But we're only talking. By the way, there's only 5 precincts that have more than 450 registered Republicans in it.
Chris.
Okay, so we're talking about a very small number. I think it's 475. Sorry,
Chris.
Okay, let's move on.
Excuse me for a second.
Is that Nathan? Go ahead, Nathan.
Yeah. From West Tech, he's getting bleed over through his mic, and I was just going to ask him if he could temporarily mute himself.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
I
it.
muted him. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Did I need to? Okay. So what we're talking about right now is the number of registered Republicans who meet at caucus. Look, nobody wants giant precincts. We want smaller precincts, but we also need stability in those precincts.
But let's be clear, this bill isn't only affecting Republicans. It's affecting every single political party. And we have to just not look at how it's going to affect us as the political party. We have to look at how it's going to affect the landscape of the state in general, right?
Okay, well, I'm representing Salt Lake County Republican Party, and I represent the Salt Lake County Republican Party on the state body, which is the SCC. And those two bodies need this bill to help stabilize for the party. Now, the other parties have been given the opportunity to speak about this. They didn't feel there was a need, and so that's fine. In fact, one of the things that when I talked to the clerks, a number of the clerks said, yes, I also reached out to the other party's chairs. They didn't see an issue with it, and they didn't give any feedback. I'm the one who's been giving feedback. I've also been talking to other individuals throughout the state about it. We agree stability is the way that the party can then take over their own nominations and completely control it, take it out of the hands of the legislature.
So am I to understand that this is a quid pro quo? If we pass this, then they'll let us take over our own elections? Is that what am I to understand?
No, not at all. No, we still
That's
have to
kind of
do
what
the
it
work.
seems like.
No, we still have to do the work. Remember, this was something that the clerks started. They said this is too much administrative change.
So our government is saying we need this. This too difficult for us to operate on a smaller precinct. So we need this to operate. And so now the party is trying to champion the government's ideology.
No, okay.
That's what I'm understanding from what you're saying.
No, that's not at all what I said. Do I need to go back? Okay. All right, let me start over. So every census year, the lines are drawn, right? And because of the constant growth, there's constant administrative splits of these precincts. That's a lot of work for the clerks. They can't keep up with it. They have to change their ballots. By the way, for every precinct, that's a ballot that they have to go verify and make sure it's accurate. Imagine being a clerk with 980 different ballots. You have to go make sure they're 100% accurate. That's a lot. You do this manually, by the way. So they came at this and said, look, we can't keep splitting in the middle of the year. So we would like a little bit more stability. And then they said, you know what? We think the Republican Party might like this too. Maybe they'll support it. They came to me and I hashed it out with a few other people and they said, yeah, that would help us so we can get closer to a point that maybe the party can also become autonomous in the nominations in the future. This is not a quick pro quo. We're not trying to make our precincts bigger. We're trying to maintain stabilization. We're raising the threshold to be forced to split a precinct, but nobody's creating bigger precincts from day one. Nobody wants that, not the clerks, not us. We're just allowing us to keep precincts stable from the beginning of a decade to the end of a decade so that we can run our own nominations. That make sense? Okay. Let's see. Why are you letting clerks tell the party what we have? No, I'm not. The clerks are not telling us what to do. They asked if we supported it. There was no pressure. They've come to us, asked for input. I've given them input. I'll tell you, there's actually some other, this is not the final bill. There is a substitute coming. I've heard people, by the way that this works is the initial bill comes out. We look it through, we review it. I call the legislators, I call them, I say, hey guys, why did you write it this way? Help me understand. We have some conversation back and forth. I met with them a couple times. I understood. I talked to the clerks. I talked to the lieutenant governor's office because it affects them. I've done a lot of footwork in this so that I don't want to break it for them either. There are things we have to do. And so what I do then is I present this to you guys, and I had a lot of great feedback. One was, this is primarily an issue in Salt Lake County. And I said, oh, that's interesting. I hadn't considered that. So I reached out to other counties, Utah County, Davis County, and a couple others. And I said, are you guys having this problem? Sure enough, Utah County and Davis County sort of have the problem. It's not as bad, but it's getting worse as they're growing. And they said, you know what, this actually would be helpful for us as well. But then a lot of the smaller counties, the party county chairs said, yeah, we don't like this. We don't need it. We don't like it. We're nowhere near the numbers you guys are. I agree with them. That's fine. So I mentioned to Jim Dunnigan and to the clerks, I said, we would like this to only affect class 1 and class 2 counties. What that means is, and I don't remember the exact numbers, but essentially what that means is Salt Lake County is the only class 1 county in Utah. And the only class 3 counties in Utah are Davis, Utah County, and Summit, I think, are the 3. And so it only affects 4 counties if we get that added. So I've asked for that.
Summit will be there soon.
Yeah, I'm sorry, say that again.
I think it's Summit or Weber.
Oh, it might be Weber. Okay, yeah.
And Summit's going to be there in like 5 years.
Okay, yeah, so I mentioned it to Jim Dunnigan, and he said, hey, that's no problem. We could probably get that in there. So in the next substitute, he's going to try to get that in there, because we don't want to affect other counties, negatively. It's really a problem here. The other thing that came up is, because I was literally last minute asked to do the registration for the whole state caucus, one of the things I ran into was I found out that from county to county, every county has precincts named in completely different formats. So Iron County has precinct 1, precinct 2, precinct 3. I mean, they literally have a count of like 16 precincts or something like that. And then there's another county that does the exact same thing, precinct 1, precinct 2, precinct. Well, when somebody registered to come to caucus night in our system, I had to figure out whether they were in precinct 1 in Iron County or in precinct 1 in whatever other county, right? It was very complex. It made it very confusing. Salt Lake County, we use this 3-digit city name followed by a sequential 3-digit number. And so we know where those precincts are at. I said, can we please ask for a statewide precinct naming convention? All the clerks agree. I haven't heard a single complaint about that. So also in that second version is going to be a statement that says every precinct must be uniquely named, and the lieutenant governor's office, because of the software they use, they're required to use a 6-digit with a colon and then 2 other digits. We don't need the other 2 digits. We're just going to use the 6 digits, and they've got a way to do that. But rather than try to dictate how everybody does it, the only thing it's going to say in there is that every precinct has a unique name. Easy. That way, nobody's dictating how to do it. It just makes it so that they're consistent and there's a unique naming structure. There's a couple other things that were requested that really didn't pertain to the party that might be in there. I really couldn't find anything that why the party would care one way or another. So, but there were minor things that some of it was just formatting, stuff like that. So I didn't see anything else in this next version that we care about. So, but the things that I've brought up are the ones that I think the party does care about. Yeah, Tracy, go ahead.
Can I ask you a question? What are your thoughts about Weber County going against this? I mean, they're going against this. So it seems like there's different counties in opposition of it. So we're not unified around it.
No, I know. And it's what's frustrating is I tried, it's been a very tough year for me. I'll be honest. I'm not going to make excuses other than I will say I've been in the hospital. I had surgery and I didn't get a chance to get the word out as much as I would have liked. And some people made assumptions about this bill that I wish they hadn't made. And there's a lot of fear. We call it FUD in my industry, fear, unrest, and what's it called? Fear, unrest, and.
But I don't think it is fair because I actually read some case law about it, and it's actually unconstitutional. I actually have the case law to back it up.
It's not unconstitutional, Casey. Tracy, we have the lawyers have all looked at this. There's nothing unconstitutional.
And the lawyers
this is about precinct borders. This is about.
I would suggest you go read the case law, Chris. It might enlighten you.
I don't know how that doesn't make any sense. This is about this is about the borders of a precinct, of a neighborhood, so that they can have the same ballot and how the party can use that. That makes no sense whatsoever. The lawyers have looked at it. There's zero.
Why don't you go to Jim Dunnigan or send his office and copy me? I'd love to read it.
Yeah.
Copy
said it
everybody
was
I
on.
think that you
voters, it
should
wasn't-
give Jim Dunnigan a notice of intent, Tracy. That's what I think you should do.
No,
So
what
that he's
you
aware
should
of the
do
case law.
is the way that this works, guys, is we find ways to improve bills, to improve the laws, and give them feedback, and we do it in a kind way. We don't go and call them names. We don't threaten lawsuits.
How about we don't
do all
tell
these
other
things.
people
Okay,
how
Casey,
to
I'm going
engage
to
in
mute
civic
you here
discourse?
in a second. There's other people who want to hear what's going on. So what we do is we go talk to the legislators, we work it out, we understand where they're coming from, and we give feedback. And they talk to lawyers, they come back to us and say, hey, this is what the lawyers said, and this is how we think it's going to affect it, and we make it better together. Okay. We've got to be careful not to just make assumptions without having conversations.
Chris, a representative works for us. And
yes,
when I
yes.
tell them that it's
Right.
unconstitutional and they don't listen, then they do deserve to
But
be
Tracy, it's
personally
not
liable.
unconstitutional.
And
If
I'm
you're saying
sorry.
that, you're really just outside.
No, I'm
outside
not.
reality.
No, I'm not.
Here's the fact. We shouldn't be
and
telling
so-
other people how to engage in civic discourse. We have free
Exactly.
speech in America, and free speech matters. And so the way that our society is designed to work is a melting pot where all of the ideas
Okay,
are
can I
there,
ask you to
and
pause
people
for just a
decide
second,
what
Casey?
ideas are going to flourish.
Okay, can I ask you to pause for a second? Anybody who is not Casey or Tracy or Kay, have your questions been answered? Do you have other concerns? Please raise your hand real quick. I'd like to hear from others. And I, look, if you have ideas, there's time to get these in the bill.
Chris, can I chime in here? So
yeah,
the way it's written right now, and I know it's being changed, okay, but the way it's written right now, it basically does two big changes, right? One is it increases the limit from 1,250 to 3,000, at which a clerk would then subdivide essentially
be forced to subdivide. Yeah,
be forced to subdivide. Okay. Right. Of 3,000 people. You have city blocks in Salt Lake City that have more than 3,000 people on them, right, or you will very soon with all the redevelopment we're seeing downtown. So the likelihood of this affecting any red areas is slim to none, right? But it does increase that threshold. It's not mandating a 3,000 person precinct through consolidation. Right. That was one of the biggest misconceptions I had heard repeated to me from multiple angles over the last week and a half. The second thing, so that's correct, right? It's not consolidating. It's simply raising the threshold.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The second thing it does is it allows the clerk to make recommendations to move precinct boundaries where it makes sense, right? So, right. And they still have to get legislative approval. They have to present that to the legislature in the county. That could be the county council, that could be the legislature, the state legislature, it could be anyone. But the clerk does not have the autonomy to just go make these changes themselves. It still has to be voted on by elected representatives. Correct. Okay. And that could
no. That is not correct.
That's what it says in the last paragraph,
Tracy. No.
Plain reading of the bill.
It is not correct.
You want to pull it up?
Yeah,
Tracy,
pull it up, and I will show
every
you
time
line for line.
Precinct changes have to go through. Hang on, precinct changes have to go through the county council in Salt Lake County.
No, it doesn't.
And they have to be approved.
Aaron Davidson
himself told me. Pull it up if that's right. Pull it up. Do not use your
You're looking at one bill, Tracy. I'm talking
me.
about the whole law. You got to understand the whole law.
You pull it up. Prove it.
I'm not prepared to do that right now, Tracy.
Yeah,
but
I bet you're not.
This is where you're confused, and I'm sorry.
Yeah, I bet you're not. I'll pull it up and I'll show you all day long. I don't bullshit people. You do. And I'm sick of this crap. This is gaslighting. I can pull it up and show you line for line that is not true.
Okay. So I've talked to the representatives. I've talked to the clerks. The process is the clerks recommend a change. They send it to the lieutenant governor's office to also verify it. And then it goes back to the county council who
I'm glad you don't read.
Okay.
I'm glad. You know what? I want to sell you some snake oil.
Okay.
It's about $1,000. You want to buy it?
So
it'll make you look young.
Is there anybody else who has questions? And I'm happy to keep Tracy and Casey and Kay, everybody else on here. But if there's other questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Chris, this is Nathan.
Yeah.
So So my first question is, it's going to be a little bit interesting because it also is going to deal with if the addition where it only affects counties of the first and the second class
Right.
isn't added. What are the other ramifications that go into drawing a precinct? Because I know that it has to be in the same tax district. It has to have the same general member of the House. As there's what are the other layers that go into drawing? Lori Stringham went into this in detail at some e-club about 2 years ago, and I haven't been able to look at that since. What are the other ones that they tell you?
Look, there's a lot of them. So one of them is there's like HOA can cause them to have to be a separate. I call them election districts, right? Because to me, it's a different ballot than your neighbor, so therefore you're in a different election district. That's not the term they use in the clerk's office, but that's the way I describe it. So HOAs, water districts, sewer, electric. Even sometimes like the way the garbage is picked up can, if it's a different company, can affect that. There's all kinds of these things that we don't really think about, but basically if anything that could be on a ballot that would only affect the people in that district, that's a separate ballot, because you can't have people voting on how your water is being handled. You can't have people who have different water services voting on how your water is going to be handled, right? So that's kind of why they have to do this. So necessarily your precincts are already pretty small. They're not going to, when they go to redraw these in 2030 is the next time, or 31, whatever, they're not going to redraw these bigger. They can't. They really do have to start as small as possible, because they already have all these other taxing districts. On top of that, you have the Senate districts, House districts, state school board, county council, city council, all these other councils. And so, I wish I had a map. I didn't keep the ones. I literally, with the executive committee and others, we literally sat down and went through all of this in detail at one time, trying to figure out, okay, how do we solve this? And that's why we came up with that bylaw in November of 2023 that said, okay, we can combine them. If they've got the same ballot or the same election district, we can combine a precinct if there's only 5 registered Republicans over here and 10 over here. And we can combine it and make it 15 registered Republicans who meet in a caucus, right? And so, but back to your question, the clerks have no incentive to make big precincts. All it would do is make more work for them. The incentive is to keep them the way they are. What they're trying to do is, like Mike said, when there's development downtown and a building suddenly becomes, goes from occupancy of, 10 to, 2,000, they're not forced to split that building into a precinct. By the way, that's going to happen here. There's going to be some situations where literally a single building is going to have to be split, and they don't know how to do it. They're still trying to figure that out. We're not there yet, so we haven't dealt with it. They haven't had to deal with it yet, but eventually that's going to happen. So there's issues that are coming. They're going to figure it out. I shouldn't say 2,000, but because of other people in the precinct that live next to it, it's going to force them to split at a building. So let me just clarify that a little bit. So it's a complex issue for the clerks. It's complex for the party, but it's actually less complex for us. We just have to maintain the same boundaries so that when we nominate, we're nominating for the right people. We don't want somebody who's got, Senator A next door, that represents the precinct next door, and we're nominating for different precincts. You can't have that, right? We have to nominate for the precinct, for the districts we live in. So that's what we're trying to solve for. And we're trying to keep it static long enough, again, so that we can move towards managing our own nominations in the future.
Chris.
Sorry, long-winded answer to a short question.
Chris, quick question. I have it on the questions here on the side.
Sorry, got out of control for me. Go ahead.
It's under control. I'm under Cole, but
yeah,
I'm asking about the rooms available for larger caucus. We were in Bingham High School in one of their large rooms last time, and we had standing room only.
Yeah. Okay. No. So, so that's another issue that's kind of outside this, but first, I want to make it clear. When I have a precinct that's too big, if there's enough time to identify that, I can go to a clerk and say, look, we would really like to split this. The clerk is able to do it. They're just forced to do it. That's different than a threshold. 1250 is a threshold where they're forced to split it. If I go to them and say, hey, look, I've got 400 members of this precinct, and by the way, they're all going to show up to caucus. I mean, chances are you're only going to get 50% or less showing up to caucus, but and I'm really worried about this. If I give them enough time, they can actually split it for me. Okay. And we're going to continue to do that. Unfortunately, we didn't anticipate. I was a newish chair. I didn't anticipate some of these things. I hadn't learned about how the growth was working. By the way, most chairs in the past hadn't dealt with any of this. This is all new problems to Salt Lake County, new problems to Utah. So to your point, yes, I'm going to encourage the next chair of this party to monitor that very closely in advance of caucus, because we don't want to have, we can put them in an auditorium, but it'd be better if we had a precinct that was a reasonable size. My idea of a reasonable size is probably a total number of registered Republicans, I believe, is right around 400 is probably the most registered Republicans in a precinct that you would want, because if half of them show up, that's 200. You can put them in a auditorium or something. I don't know. I mean, and to be honest, you're not going to get 50% showing up, but just, I'm kind of like putting out worst case scenario there. Does that make sense?
It helps, but I think there are not enough auditoriums to do what you just described in the southwest part of the county.
So keep in mind, there's only 5 precincts with more than 475 registered Republicans in that precinct in all of Salt Lake County. So yes, I understand, but the failure was partly on my part, but it was also, I had 3 weeks when I was given these new precincts, 3 weeks to combine, to identify all these different problems, to reallocate, to build the software, to get people invited, and to do it. Now, that was something I hadn't anticipated. Knowing that now, whoever the next chair is, I'm going to go to them and I'm going to say, these are the things you watch out for. Look at Bluffdale, look at Harriman, look at Riverton. You've got large precincts. Let's split them early. Let's go to the clerk, ask them to be split, and so it doesn't become a problem. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I also had a comment out there about HB 193, which is signature gathering. I don't want to talk about it, but I think that's something that we need to be considering along with this, and consider how that dilutes our vote.
Yeah, a couple theories on that. I'm not 100% one way or the other, but I would love to talk to you about that another time, or maybe have another meeting about that. At first, I had an opinion that made sense, but then I've had conversations with people, and I kind of, I don't know. I'm undecided still on that. But yeah, let's focus on this right now. But I appreciate you bringing that up because that's an important one.
Chris, I know you told me I couldn't speak again, but I have a question.
I didn't say you couldn't speak again.
What do you mean when you merged the precincts? Was that your choice, or is that somebody else's choice?
Okay, so what we did is we found, so there's a web page on our site that I explained how this could work. Let me see if I can find it really quick because it helps a lot. It was a bylaw that we passed in November of 2023 that said that we can take adjacent precincts and sorry, 1 second here. We can take adjacent precincts and combine them so that, oh man, it's kind of complex when I'm trying to explain it right now, but when you read it, it actually starts to make a lot more sense.
And so how we did it, Chris, is we took adjacent precincts with less than a certain number of assigned county delegates that were in the same voting district. In other words, they voted for the same member of House, Senate, chair, like everything. They voted for, they would get essentially the same ballot. The only thing that we didn't care about was nonpartisan races. So city government races we didn't care about.
So explain that though, Nathan.
We had to
'cause
go.
I
We had
don't
to go.
understand.
Well, so we had to go all the way down to anything that the county convention might vote for. State school board, county council, county clerk, county mayor, anything that might end up being considered. And then you have
So
partisan.
why would a very red like I live in Riverton and my district got merged, or my precinct
Oh,
got merged. So why
which-
did that happen?
Okay, I will give you. That's a great question, Tracy, because there are precincts. So you probably were part of a larger precinct, and you said, why would you combine this with the precinct next to me? The other precinct might have been a very small precinct.
Oh no, it's not. It's very red.
Well,
It's
no,
very
I'm not
red.
saying very red. I'm saying it was a very small one, meaning they didn't. So we needed to have, if you take 1,180 delegates, for example, let me do the math really quick. I think what we decided is ideally we would get to a point where it would be, I want to say it's 168 registered Republicans to one delegate. That would be ideal, because then every delegate would have the exact same representation power at convention, right? And that, so that was kind of the goal. We knew we couldn't, there's no way to accomplish it perfectly, but we were going from the worst case, which was a 1-to-1, all the way to 1 to 325. I mean, so it was absurd what we started with. So the fact that we were able to get close and to narrow that down so that one delegate basically represented the same number of registered Republicans was phenomenal. So in your precinct, and I don't know, I don't have it in front of me, but in your precinct, what we probably did is we said, okay, if we can combine these two, this precinct next to you probably didn't reach the 168. They probably only had, whatever, I don't know how many less. I mean, as far as percentage wise, you're probably right. They were probably very red, but because of the way that it was carved out, it didn't reach the 168. And so if we combined it with yours, maybe you guys had more than 168, and then and then we gave you 2 delegates. Well, then the average becomes 168. Does that make sense?
No, not really, but it's okay.
Hey,
Okay.
Chris, this is Kay. Can you even hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
Okay, because you haven't let me speak once, or I had
I'm
my
sorry,
hand
Kay.
raised
Go
for
ahead.
a long time. Okay, I just want to say to these people that are precinct chairs, because you guys are the hardest working people out there,
They are.
and I know how hard you work, and I want you guys to understand fully that we are under attack. This caucus and convention will be gone. We cannot let these bills like this HB27 and the 193. They are a direct assault. A direct assault. So we're on the USS Poseidon. Are you guys going to go down with the ship, or are we going to fight and save this party? Because I am so sick and tired of hearing the word clerk tonight. I'm so sick and tired. I mean, we are our own party. You guys, what happened at caucus was a joke. What happened at convention was a joke. And I wonder if it wasn't intentional. I'm sorry, but this is how I feel. And you guys can think that we're radicals or disruptors, but that's what we need, because this party's going down. And I don't know if you guys realize it, but I know that the people that believe in running for a precinct chair, they love this party and they believe in it. They believe in our bylaws and they believe in our party platform, and they want to see it be there for our kids. And if we don't defeat some of these bills, and if we don't let our voices be heard and quit listening to our legislators, they listen to us. They work for us. And those clerks work for us. So we need to start standing up for our party. This cannot continue. And I'm so sick and tired of people just saying, oh, I don't want to be a disruptor. I don't want to be a disruptor. I don't do this because I'm a bad person. I do it because I love my party. And I
believe that, Kay. I really want to.
Well,
I want to be clear.
Okay. All
I
right.
believe.
Well,
I
I'm
believe
just
that all of
telling
you here do care. I believe that all of you are concerned about the party. I believe that all of you are conservative, more conservative, less conservative. I don't care. We're all conservative. We believe in a lot of the same things, and for the same reasons. We care about our families. We care that society is has the woke mind virus. It's scary, and I don't like it. And I've been fighting hard as well. We might have a disagreement on this, but I think what we can agree on is the precinct chairs are hard workers. The delegates do an amazing job. But what I don't like is when we went from 680 precincts in 2021 to 980 something precincts this year. That's 300 new new delegates that were given away to blue precincts because we were forced to, because the clerks were forced to split blue districts. That is more than 23 of the 27 counties in Utah. So giving those away, hang on, giving those away basically muted those other counties, because the Democrats, they're coming in, they're infiltrating, they're taking the party, and they're showing up to convention and they're voting like they do. And that is the result. So this is why I'm fighting for it, because I want to stop that. There's nothing we can do. The only time you can kick somebody out of the party is if they've done something illegal or misrepresenting illegally, doing some pretty okay. Well, right now that's the only thing that we can do. We have some rights, but there is a limit. We can't go out and sharpen our pitchforks and get a 2-for-1 at Home Depot with our pitchforks and go after every single individual. So we have to be smart about it. We have to disincentivize them from joining the party. We also have to stop giving away these delegate positions where we're not protecting them. What we're doing here is trying to protect those positions. The other thing we're going to do, and I talked about this at one of the CCMs recently, is we're going to make sure that for every delegate or for every registered Republican, we're donating to a cause that they hate, right? And so that's going to disincentivize them from registering Republican anymore. Because I'm going to say, hey, Mr. Rhino, because you're a registered Republican today, $50 is going to go to Pro-Life Utah. And this is just an example. $50 is going to go to Pro-Life Utah in your name, and we thank you for being a Republican. Imagine being at heart a Democrat and realizing that your name is going to be on the lieutenant governor's disclosures saying that you supported Pro-Life Utah. That's how we disincentivize Democrats from joining the party. We can't force them out. We don't have enough pitchforks.
The party doesn't have any money. But, what good was being a delegate? We did everything we could possibly do, and it didn't even matter. There will not even be a reason to have a delegate. Delegates were completely irrelevant in the last election.
And here's a question that I had when you were talking about the precincts up north, how they might have more blue-oriented voters, right? So what effort has been made in Salt Lake County, in the northern part of Salt Lake County, to go and talk to people and evangelize the Republican message and how the taxes in Salt Lake County suck? And guess what? Now you live in Salt Lake County, you live in this area. Well, you're going to have to pay for, a taxpayer-funded stadium for a billionaire that, is getting invited to the county convention to come speak as an honored guest.
Yeah. Who do you think that's
what efforts have been made to go and evangelize the message? Have we checked the registered like the people that have their blue card to go and get a hunter safety, either a blue card, their hunter safety? Have we checked that to see who is a hunter, who's getting like a fishing license, who's a mechanic that lives in those areas?
Right.
Have we done any work to that extent to see who would be statistically likely to be conservative, that we can go and target voter registration in those areas?
Those are great ideas. Let's do that.
Exactly, they are. And guess what? They haven't been tapped. They haven't been explored. And the reason they haven't
rather
been
than be a
explored
naysayer, let's do it.
because there's too many people that are concerned with credibility and receiving credit for ideals instead of actually looking at what would work on a logistical basis, and then taking those ideas as a team and working through those. I don't give a shit about credit. I've actually ran things through other people's name intentionally so that they could get credit for my ideas. Okay,
and that's awesome, and I appreciate that. Let me.
I think that we need to start utilizing those concepts, and I just am curious what ideas have been utilized to grow those numbers in the northern part of the state.
Yeah, so I've presented many times at libraries in Salt Lake City. And on all kinds of different issues. I try to attend as many of the community meetings as possible. I'm one person, but I also encourage our House district chairs to do this. In fact, on a regular basis, at executive committee meeting, I ask our executive committee to please organize town halls and work with your legislators. Be aware of the legislation that's out there. Hold town halls so that you can have discussions about them. Those are the kinds of things that we can be doing to get started. I really haven't had any takers yet. I'm one person. And so, yeah, I agree with you. When I became chair, the first thing that I realized is if I had a nickel for every great idea, I'd be a billionaire right now. The problem is billionaires, we stand alone. I mean, we need people like you. We need people like, all the Republicans to step up and do the things you're talking about. I'm 100% in agreement with you. Let's do it. But don't say, why aren't you doing it? Say how, I'm going to go do this. Don't even say how, just say, I'm going to go do it.
Chris, let's look objectively back a couple years ago when I asked you for the registered voter list of the independent voters and you refused to provide it to me.
So what you didn't actually ask for that. What you asked for was,
I have the text messages to prove it.
And okay, well, look, Casey, I'm not going to get into all that right now. I know that's a whole nother topic. Look, HB27 is beneficial to the party. It's beneficial so that we can move on and become autonomous from the state and run our own nominations. By the way, let me clarify. A nomination is the party's endorsement on a candidate that, hey, this is the candidate who represents us the best. If we start remembering that, it's not part of the election. It should.
Oh my
whenever
God.
we say, okay, let me talk, please. Whenever we say it's part of the election, that's how they get away with saying, oh, well, then we can control that. Because, by the way, the courts have said the legislature can control the elections. Okay, that's why they get away with it. Look, we should not be gatekeepers to who's on the general election ballot. The party should not be the gatekeepers. The party should be the ones who say, this is our nominee who is on the election ballot, on the general election ballot, right? If we can get to that point, Republicans will vote for Republicans
Bob
will
would have
vote.
got up on the stage at convention and said that Phil Lyman and Trent Stagg, these are our nominees. This is our party bylaws. But you guys didn't. You didn't stand up for the party. You didn't.
Absolutely did, Kay.
No, you didn't.
Did you see the mailer I sent out?
No, here's
Chris,
the
I've
thing.
talked to Phil
Did you
about
see
this
the emails I
extensively.
sent out?
I
Did you
did
see
see
the
what you
statements
sent
I
out.
sent out?
Hey, hold on, Chris.
I'm
worked
sorry.
on
No, I
Phil's
take
campaign.
offense to that.
Chris,
I
I've
take
worked
offense to the fact
I
that if
went
he was
out.
over 60%, he should have gone to the general. Those are right there in our bylaws. As a
Hey,
matter of fact, it was
yeah.
in the literature that was provided to us at convention. It was in the literature.
And I stood up for Phil in every instance until
Chris?
he sued the party. When we were forced to become defendants instead of the people who were supporting him. Yes, you're absolutely right. I absolutely defended him and helped him in every step of the way until we became defendants when we were forced to back off.
Unbelievable.
The reason
I
that
don't
the
know.
party was forced to be a defendant was because the party wouldn't actually stand up for itself, Chris.
Well, okay, and this is a question I've asked many, many, many times.
It's so
The
true.
party-
While you were asking
Okay.
questions and talking to people, the entire duration from convention through the primary, you could have been filing a lawsuit or taking the action from the party to file a lawsuit. Did you do that?
We
No,
actually were
and I've
about
talked to
but
Phil
yes.
Lyman about this specifically, and he's
Yeah.
told me that you've called him and you've tried to tell him that he needs to stop supporting me because I'm not doing him any good or I'm doing him harm. Well, guess what? Phil won't support you, Chris.
I get it.
He's told
I
me
get
those
it.
words. He's
I get
told me
it.
that you actually hindered his campaign. He's
Well,
told me those words.
He also believes a lot of things that aren't true, and unfortunately,
Well, you refused to give his campaign
We've gotten off
delegate
topic
list
here. We've gotten
and
off
the
topic. We're
precinct
here
chair
about
list.
HB27. Look, I'm not going to keep on arguing about
Okay.
this because the
You
fact
think it's
is
good for the
we're here
party. We
about
think it's bad, and we're having a question and answer. And you've said your
about
piece. You think it's
HB27.
good. You think that it's good for the party, and I'm saying it's not. And I hope you
Great.
guys will listen to reason.
Me too.
HB50. How's HB54 worked out for us?
Yeah, it's hell. You know what? I literally walked miles and miles and miles gathering signatures for Keep My Voice. I was the regional director for Salt Lake County for Keep My Voice. I received an award from Dave Bateman because of all the work that we did in Salt Lake County.
goodness.
We were super, super successful out here. because you guys, those who weren't around don't really understand. SB 54 is nothing compared to what almost happened. Okay, so we
So,
fought
Chris,
and we stopped. Hang on, let me finish. And then because we didn't quite get enough signatures, and when I say the state didn't get enough signatures, because we didn't have enough signatures, what we did is we realized we needed to change direction. So we watched who Count My Vote got signatures from. We went back and re-knocked those doors, and we removed their signatures. I probably walked over 100 miles. I literally came home a couple times with bloody feet. So don't tell me that I didn't fight SB 54. I did at every turn. I always have, and I always will. So I love the party. I love our conservative values, and I'm not going to be bullied by people like you guys who weren't around.
I am not bullying you, but when you say someone sued you, that is wrong. A declaratory judgment. A declaratory judgment. You have to include the party so they can be commanded what to do.
But the party did what they had to do.
No, they did not. And you're going to learn, because I'm still going to sue you all. And then you'll know what
That's a great way to
a declaratory judgment.
Conversation.
I'm out.
Super not matter,
Chris, thank you so much for explaining HB 27.
And you are fake.
Have fun with these folks.
This declaratory judgment.
I'm done,
you need to
guys.
learn what
this
it is.
Not productive. Tracy, go ahead, sue. You guys are conflict junkies, and you're not getting anything done. You're destructive, not productive. I'm sorry, this is just not going to go anywhere. Others,
Chris,
I hope
again, you can send me the list of registered independent voters.
Is we're trying to help the party. Thank you. Good.